So, welcome to another session of Speak Your Mind by Chloe Mobilize. And my guest this time is Patu Ndango. Patu, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'm very happy to be part of this initiative, and I think the climate needs all of us.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And Patu, well, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do. But in this session, Patu is going to be speaking to the question of, is net zero by 2050 ambitious enough? And Patu, if it's okay with you, I'd like to start off actually by asking you just to maybe tell a little bit about all of the amazing ventures that you're involved in. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, when I finally got a chance to meet you, you told me, and I was really impressed. So I think it might be interesting also for the audience to hear a bit about that. And then I'm just going to let you go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Ian, for passing me the floor. I am very happy to be part of the initiative, like I said, and I think you've already introduced my name. I'm called Patu Ndango from Cameroon. I'm an environmental engineer by profession. I'm also a social entrepreneur and a climate activist. I belong to an organization called Game Changers, which I am the co-founder and vice president. And through Game Changers, we have embarked on a mission to try to engage as many people in Cameroon as possible in the fight against climate change. So we are mainly focused on non-state actors because we believe that most of the solutions that can come towards the fight against climate change and other environmental challenges would come from us, the non-state actors. And so through Game Changers, we have a couple of activities that we implement on the ground, all of which we do with the aim to inspire these stakeholders to take concrete commitments towards reducing their carbon footprint. So some of the activities that we have been carrying out since the creation of Game Changers in 2021, we have things like the very first Circular Economy Forum that took place in Cameroon in 2022, and which brought together a very rich diversity of stakeholders, including the public sector, because the fact that we are focused on the non-state actors does not mean that we do not work in collaboration with public authorities. So we had a very diverse group of, invitees, multinationals, the small businesses, ministries, and people who are involved in, circularity practices. So it was an occasion for us to showcase the opportunity that the circular economy presents in the fight against climate change. And I think that it was a very successful event that kind of inspired many people to want to adopt some of these circularity practices. And then we have also organized activities like a very high level climate commitment events, which brought together still a very diverse group of stakeholders who made public commitments to take concrete actions towards reducing their carbon footprint. And that was still in 2022. And then we also regularly organize activities, training workshops for small and medium-sized enterprises in different cities in Cameroon. We started with the city of Yaoundé, and then we expanded to the city of Douala, which are the two biggest cities in Cameroon. And these workshops, we call them Green Growth Capacity Building Workshops. And the workshops are intended for people, promoters of small and medium-sized enterprises, because we believe that despite the fact that they are small businesses today, they have that potential to grow into big businesses and even multinationals tomorrow. So we are trying to get them from the very early stages to begin to be aware of the impact that the activities have on the environment and the impact that these activities would have as they grow. And also, the very important thing that we hope to achieve through these workshops is that we want these businesses to adopt sustainability practices so that as they grow into sustainable businesses that have lesser negative impact on the environment. So other activities that we organize include things like plastic bottle collection campaigns and sensitization at the same time, because we try to make people to realize how our everyday consumption habits generate huge amounts of plastic waste, which usually accumulates in specific locations within the cities of Yaoundé and Douala. So we get people to go on the site where we have huge heaps of plastics, and we carry out a collection activity. And at the same time, we try to inspire people to adopt other methods of serving water or beverages during their events, in their institutions, that would generate less plastic bottles. And then in doing that, we also try to showcase how we can host plastic-free events, because in all of our events that we organize in Cameroon, these events are usually plastic-free. No matter the hundreds of people that we bring together during our events, we showcase to people that these events can actually be plastic-free. And how do we do that? We do that simply by serving water in reusable materials like jars and glasses, and also encouraging people to come to events usually with their reusable water bottles and stuff like that. So, and then we also encourage people to install like water fountains in their institutions or offices, so that workers can get to serve or to drink water without necessarily making use of the single-use plastic bottles. And we think that we have been able to inspire quite a good number of companies to adopt such practices. So we also do tree planting activities. We've planted so many trees. For the plastic waste collection activity, I must make the precision that when we collect the plastics, we do not recycle it ourselves for now, because we do not have the facilities to do that. But we work in collaboration with a company that recycles plastic waste into other materials like plastic pellets and ropes. So that is how we handle the huge amounts of plastic that we collect. We've collected over 250 tons of plastic waste to date. So like I was saying, other activities that we do include tree planting, and also workshops to train young people on how to recycle waste materials into valuable consumer goods. So just in a very brief, that's what we do as game changers in Cameroon.
Yes, that's amazing. The reason, when you first told me that, the reason that I wanted you to maybe tell that to the audience is it's incredible how much you are doing on the ground with such a wide range of stakeholders implementing these principles. And then if the question that you're here to speak about is net zero by 2050 ambitious enough? For me at least, it's obvious. Not only is it not ambitious enough, we can't wait until then to take action. And you're an amazing example of how action has already been taken every day, all with all different kinds of groups, and you're already doing it. But we're not here to hear me talk about you. This is all about you. So please, I'd like to open it up, and please, and take it away. This is I'd love to hear more about your thoughts about net zero by 2050. Is it ambitious enough? What needs to be done? What are the directions? What are your thoughts about this? Over to you again.
I think that's a very good question or reflection that we could have about the net zero by 2050. And my honest opinion about it is that it is not ambitious enough. I think a lot of things are still being done on papers, by word. But what we need today is not, the things that we write on papers or the declarations that we make. What we need today are concrete actions, actions that people can see, actions that can yield concrete results. And so, by 2050, the aim is for us to get to the point where the amount of greenhouse gases that we emit into the atmosphere is almost zero. And how do we get there if we are not making the effort to get there? We have been having a lot of conferences from, back then, the Conference of the Parties. And every year we keep having commitments, we keep having pledges, but none of those pledges actually materializes itself like 100%. Countries go to the conferences, and I think the main thing that it's kind of like hindering the achievement of this net zero by 2050, because I am sure that we will not achieve net zero by 2050 at the rate at which we are going, and by doing the things that we are doing right now. So one of the things that is hindering this target, in my opinion, is the fact that we have capitalistic economies where people are self-centered, people are self-interested and only driven by the desire to make profits. We have a lot of companies that are carrying out activities, producing what we use on a daily basis. And in the course of doing those production processes, a lot of greenhouse gases are being generated and emitted into the atmosphere. And most of the products as well that come out of these production processes, they have negative impact at the end of their life cycle. And so for me, we need action at every level. And those actions should not just be actions to brainwash or to greenwash or to please people, but they should be actions because we believe that we have a future generation to safeguard this planet for. And we need to start thinking, what are those things that each and every one of us can do at our own levels? What are those things that the government can do? What are those things that the individuals can do? Because individuals as well have a role to play. What are those things that companies can do? And we need to go back to the drawing board and start thinking from scratch and start making those efforts to be realistic. We also need to think about some of these actions in terms of the gain that we can also have. People do not know that adopting some of these sustainability practices and circularity practices can actually be gainful for the companies. So I think we need to start making companies to realize that by doing some of these things as well, they will not just be contributing to save the planet, they will also be contributing to reduce some of their costs. You know, with the huge amount of waste that I see in a country like Cameroon, I wonder why some companies still rely on raw material that is being extracted from, say, our forests or from the soils to make things, from scratch, newly produced items, when we can actually make use of secondary raw materials that we get from the waste that is being dumped right now. I know that our realities are not the same with other countries, for example, with developed countries, but most of the environmental challenges that we face are similar. So they are similar. They might be producing the negative impacts differentially because we have different ways of handling it and different resources, but we can have the same impact if we carry out the same, or if we carry out the same if we have the same vision of where we want to be, and if we know exactly what we need to do internally, which would create those impacts that people want to see. And another thing that I want to talk about is that we need to start thinking about how what is that exact target or that we need to achieve by 2050, because many people think about the net zero by 2050, but they don't know exactly what that entails. And where are we right now? Today, this is 2024. 2050 is, I think, just like 26 years to come. But what is it that we need to achieve by 2050? And is that really realistic? I think the science has been clear. It's the rate at which we are going today, without any doubt, we will not get to that net zero by 2050, because already we need to have reduced or we need to keep global warming to about 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. But right now, science has proven that we are going to go above the 1.5 degrees Celsius if we keep on doing the activities that we do today, if we keep on taking the actions that we are taking today. So what is it that we need to do? By 2030, for example, that's a shorter target that we could consider, for example. And we need to think. We need to think, and we need to be truthful to ourselves. And one thing that I would like to encourage each and every one of us, each and every stakeholder, is that let us report, the various impact or the various pollution that we create in every step of our activities. We should be able to, first of all, report it sincerely. And then secondly, we should also now be able to report the milestones that we are achieving in trying to get to that net zero as a company and as a country, as an economy. So, I think we have so much to talk about when we are talking about net zero by 2050, and also when we are trying to understand some of the things that we can do. So I think, first of all, when we get to the level of the government, what should our governments do? So we should first of all start by thinking about what our governments can do. Then we get to what we as individuals, we as non-public stakeholders can do. I think our governments have been trying, but their efforts are not good enough. We have been going for negotiations in international events, and we have been coming back and having the same routine as before. And also, I think developed countries, for example, they need to accept the fact that developing countries need to be assisted, because developing countries contribute the least to the global emissions, but they are impacted the most by the negative impact. So I think the past few COPs have been yielding results, such as developing countries or developed countries making pledges to bring or to contribute climate finance to assist developing countries with their climate actions and their fight against climate change and other environmental challenges. But like I said, most of these things remain on paper. Do we truly get them to materialize themselves? No, because I think till date, most of the pledges that have been made during these conferences have not been made a reality. So we need to start thinking of ways in which we can finance this climate action activities that we are referring to. There are so many things that we can do as countries to mitigate the fight, or to help mitigate the impact of climate change, and also to help adapt. And also some of the things, I think right now we're talking about the net zero by 2050. What we are most interested in is mitigation, because by net zero by 2050, we should be able to prevent the generation of greenhouse gases, or to at least reduce its emission. It's not about us doing the things that we know that contribute enormously to the emissions of greenhouse gases, but it's about us trying to look for alternatives, trying to look for other options that would have lesser emissions. And now, for those emissions that we cannot mitigate or that we cannot reduce, now we start thinking about ways to adapt, ways to extract them, to extract the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. And so that is where we should be looking at. We should look at efforts that would help mitigate climate change. So for the governments, let's look at ways that we can collaborate and help each other. in terms of climate finance, but also in terms of the transfer of technologies. We have a lot of technologies out there that are helping developed countries to do a lot of things and to adapt or to take climate action to another level. Technologies that are not usually available or easily accessible for the developing nations. So how do we get to that stage where we can easily gain or have this transfer of technologies between nations, between the South and the North? And then now, we also need to think about the non-state actors. How do we also get to have those resources that would help us scale our climate actions? And how do we create more visibility for the things we do? Because sometimes people get to learn by seeing what others are doing. People get to get inspired by seeing what others are doing and the results that it's yielding. So we should create a platform where people can learn by seeing what people are doing in other parts of the world and in other parts of the countries. So I think the non-state actors that we are, we should multiply our actions. We should get more people to see how negatively our activities are having on the environment. Um, and lastly, but not the least, I think we should also start thinking about technologies that can help absorb, for example, greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. And this is something that is not just a responsibility of the government, it's a responsibility of innovators. We have great minds, we have young people, both in Africa and in the Western world, that have amazing technologies that they are working on. Some have been tested, and others are still in the process of being tested and being proven as feasible solutions to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, because these greenhouse gases are already there. And we need technologies that can help us drastically cut down these greenhouse gases to levels that will enable us to achieve net zero by 2050. So how do we promote or invest in such technologies to make them to be widely used by companies that are great polluters? And so I would say we really need to think about ways that we can mobilize funds and use those funds for the right reasons. I think we have been investing a lot in other sectors, but the environmental sector is not a sector to be taken as a lesser priority. I think the environmental sector, as we stand today, should be at the very top of every agenda, because all of the other things that we are doing, if we get to that stage where the environment or our environment gets degraded to a point where we lose it, or to the point where we cannot reverse the impacts that we are having, then we are definitely not going to be able to do all the other things that we are doing. There is no education in a world where you have flooding. There will be no need for any healthcare if we cannot even resist the high temperatures, if we cannot even eat because the food that we are producing could not yield very well due to flooding or excessive temperatures or poor soils and stuff like that. So we really need to put the environment at the top of every development agenda. And for me, I think every other sector should come afterwards. So the environment should be the priority, and every country should think about ways in which we can compare or we can get people to make the right choices. We can also provide people with the options, with the alternatives, because sometimes it is good to tell people that there are options, there are alternatives, or we should not use this or use that. But what are some of those options that we would make available for people? And that would help us to achieve net zero by 2050. So another thing that we should also think about is how do we make alternatives available so that we can easily replace some of those practices, some of those activities, some of those processes and products that are leading to high levels of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. So finance, at the end of the day, is a very important option to talk about, because we cannot make significant progress if we do not have the finance to invest in a lot of areas in clean technologies, renewable energies, in say in alternatives to say single-use plastics, in better ways of irrigating our crops, in better ways of producing or rearing cattle and stuff like that. So what are some of those alternatives that we can make available to people? Yeah.
Well, that's you've touched on so many different themes, and that's also why I asked you to tell the audience a little bit about your activity, because the fact that you're working with such a wide range of stakeholders on such a variety of projects, some are system changing, some of them just take advantage of what already exists, the existing mechanisms. And I see those same themes reflected in whether it is whether in the different kinds of stakeholders, whether it is government, whether it is non-state actors, whether it's private individuals, whether it's entrepreneurs in the corporate sector. Each of them has its own set of actions that it needs to take. And one of the themes that I hear over and over is the need to break down silos for a greater genuine intent to cooperate to address this, to put this issue at the top of every single agenda and then let the rest of that fit in. So for me, that's the underlying theme, together with the need for this much greater sense of mutual responsibility, greater social justice, a sharing of knowledge, a sharing of resources, a sharing of responsibility, a sharing of caring about where we're all going. So I like to ask the speaker towards the end of each session, what's the one point that you would like the rest of the audience to take away from what you've said? You know, if you'd like to sum it up into one last point for the last minute or so, that'd be great.
All right. So one thing that I would like the audience to take from what I have said is that, like I said, each and every one of us has a role or a responsibility in taking this climate action to another level. And so my takeaway message would be that we should also think about women, because I am a woman and I think women have a lot to bring to the table. And the country from which I come from, for example, women are usually shying away from such battles. But sometimes it's not the fault of the women, because some cultures automatically restrict women from, for example, going further with their education and pursuing careers that could contribute towards the fight against climate change, for example. But in talking about stakeholders and how each and every one of us has something to contribute, we should give a very big attention to women, because women have proven to be very good at managing situations, at bringing solutions, at having innovations that have been yielding positive impact. So I think we should give a chance for women to excel in the fight against climate change.
I think that's a very good point. And it comes back to the need for looking once again at how the system operates. Like you said, Patu, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak and present so many of these issues from your perspective. So again, thank you. And I hope this has also been interesting for you too.
Yeah, definitely. It's been interesting, and I really hope to see the outcome of the event. I don't know if it's an event that is open for, say, the public to attend and get to learn as well.
Absolutely. No, it definitely is. And we plan to have more of these events. And regardless of those events, it'd be great to also work with you during the course of the year. I think that your observation that there's also a need for an alternative to the way that the current COPs work and their emphasis, I think that's a very good point as well. The last few years have made that clear. As we come up to, as we look forward to COP29, there's a sense of more of the same. And that's what you talked about, the need for, no, it has to be different. So Patu, thank you so much again. And I look forward to hopefully working with you much more in the coming year as well.
Thank you so much too. Thank you.
Thank you.